Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first episode of what we are coining so far as the Atlantic Bushcraft Adventures. I believe that's what we were going with, wasn't it, Ben? Or at least it's a working title at this point.
It's the working title. It's the best one we came up with, I guess.
Well, so far, so good. I mean, it's catchy, if nothing else.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty all inclusive to our intended audience. So that's excellent.
Yeah. So this episode, as Ben and I were discussing before we started up here, we'd like to cover a few things. We're going to talk a little bit about ourselves. That way, you guys get to meet us a little bit. We're going to talk about how long we've been bushcrafting, how we got into bushcrafting, what bushcrafting means to us individually, and where we'd like to see this podcast go, or what we're expecting out of it too, because we think it's important for you guys to know what we're expecting just as much as we'd like to know what you guys are expecting us to do as well, or any suggestions you can give us. Anything you want to add to that, Ben? Does that basically sum it up?
No, that's about it. I mean, until we know what our audience really wants and what they enjoy, we're not going to be able to fully direct this. So we definitely want to hear their feedback and see what they liked, what they didn't like, what they'd like to see more of, if they have any questions. I think both of us are quite into looking into things and learning stuff. So even if we don't know a lot about it, we'll definitely research and come back with something at a future podcast. And if there's questions right away, we'll try to get to them as we can. Can't guarantee we'll answer all questions at a individual podcast, but we'll get to what we can.
Exactly. We'll definitely give it our best shot. We do have the chat open there, so anybody that's listening, we are going to say hi to Adrian and Randall there. We do see you watching. If you guys have a question, please feel free to type it in. If I see it come up in the chat, Ben's watching there too. We'll try and answer it as best we can for you. All that being said, let's jump right into it. So, a little bit about myself. My name's Robert. I'll leave the last name out of it for now. Anybody that really wants to find it can. First question, are you hoping for audience questions or a structured topic list? So just to cover that, it's going to be a little bit of both. We are going to have a general topic, but if you guys have questions, it's definitely going to be as interactive as we possibly can, because that's kind of, I'm jumping ahead of myself, but that's one of the things I'd like to see from this podcast is to be interactive. Eventually, when it goes to audio only for those that want to listen, at least then they'll know that other people have a say in this. It's not just Ben and I spouting off to each other, giving us, the holy grail of opinions and stuff like that. Myself, I'm very open to discussion. We'll have a good little debate. Ben and I's views hopefully will conflict at some point, because that always makes for an interesting topic. But
Sure.
hey, Jamie, I seen you popped in there too. So sorry, getting back on track. A little bit about me. My name's Robert. I grew up in a bushcraft. My father, my grandfather, they were both woods people. They literally worked in the woods. They were both loggers or firewood or brush gatherers like that. That's where I grew up. That's what you did. You either farmed, fished, or you were in the woods, right? It's Nova Scotia. Um, so also for those of you that might know it, and I'm not going to drag it into this a whole lot because I'm hoping to keep it separate. Some of you may know me from my Budget Bushcraft channel. Hopefully that's as much as I ever touch on that. But yeah, you might know me from there. And another little bit is anybody, you might have seen me at the, well, you can't see it on my camera there, but the first annual Nova Scotia Bushcraft event. I was at that. I've tried to make it to every one. I've only missed one. But no, that's basically the short version of me. There's not really a lot to say. I'm pretty much an open book. So what about you, Ben?
Somewhat similar. I grew up in Newfoundland, though, central Newfoundland, so I didn't have fishing as an option, but back where I grew up, it was hockey or the outdoors, and I couldn't afford hockey. And my father, my grandfather, even at a young age, me and my cousin would be out fishing. Probably shortly after we started school, we would take our bicycles, go out and fish. Like I've spent my whole life in some aspect in the woods. So, I moved to Nova Scotia in about 2003, I believe it was. And since I've been here, I've been exploring Nova Scotia and enjoying that. Um, and it's kind of one of my passions. I love learning anything new, and I find bushcraft is so all-encompassing that it gives me that. I mean, we'll talk more about that later. But yeah, that's kind of me in a quick nutshell. I expect you'll learn a lot more about me as this goes on, and we talk about various subjects. But yeah, most of my life growing up in Newfoundland and here, I've been in and out. My father was a hunting guide. My grandfather grew up in the woods, uh, and I tutored under them really. So it's been a long time.
So, in short, it kind of sounds like we have some similarities there. You grew up with it, both my father and grandfather in the woods. Your grandfather was in the woods, so at least we got that in common. We'll have a little, hopefully, some similarities there. We may have a few differences with things that we learned as we were growing up. Adrian did ask a question on the side here, so I will bring it up. I do have a question. What would be the best starting gear for new campers / bushcrafters to invest in? You want to jump on this one first, Ben? Because I think my view might be a little different, or maybe
Uh,
it'll exactly be the same. I don't know.
it all depends on your budget. I mean, if you can shop around and your expectations, you can go as little as a tarp and a backpack and some really simple gear to some people who go full out. I mean, there's people who spend hundreds of dollars on a tent or a hammock with the top of the line stuff. It's a lot of it's based off budget, and a lot of it would definitely be based off your preference and your level of comfort you expect to have. If you're comfortable sleeping on the ground, you don't even need the tarp. You can build a lean-to and just go in with an axe, a knife, and a decent backpack. I strongly recommend a good backpack as a great starting point. I've camped with a cheap, poor backpack, and you will probably injure yourself after a short trip trying to pull a cheap, poorly made backpack with any amount of weight in it. So if there was one piece of gear I would suggest that you buy good and new, it'd probably be a backpack, personally. Everything else you can probably find used or borrow, but you do want to get something that fits you for that. What are your thoughts?
So my thoughts, as corny as this sounds, is you don't need a lot of money to get invested into bushcrafting. You have to have the want to go into bushcrafting, and the best thing you can have going to the woods is go with somebody with a little bit of experience that can show you the ropes. And what I mean by that is, if you're new to bushcrafting, or especially if you're new to the woods itself, don't just run out and expect to be like, well, I won't pull names. Don't expect to be a survivalist. Let's go with that, because surviving and bushcrafting to me are two different things. Survival is something you do in a situation that's out of your hands and you're trying to make it through. Bushcrafting to me, and this is one of our questions later, but I'll touch it now. But bushcrafting to me is, you got to be comfortable in the woods, and bushcrafting just makes you more comfortable and more at home in the woods. And the best way to get comfortable with anything is experience and training, right? So grab a buddy that's maybe got a little bit more experience than you, or hit up some YouTube channels or the Nova Scotia Bushcraft group or something like that, where you get a wealth of knowledge and get yourself really informed. That's going to be your best piece of gear going out there, because honestly, the rest of it, as you mentioned, it's really depending on when you're going, where you're going, and how long you're going for. Without knowing those three things, I really can't give you a basics of what you need to go do that. But if I had to pick one piece of material equipment, getting back on topic here, to me, it'd be a good sleeping bag. Everything else can go to snot. As long as you can stay warm, keep dry, and get a good night's sleep, you can handle a lot of other stuff. To me, a good sleeping system or sleeping bag is a good way to go. I like a tarp, or not a tarp, sorry, a hammock with a sleeping bag. You'll figure that out as you go, but definitely a good sleeping bag. You don't want to have a cold first night. It'll just give you a bad taste in your mouth for bushcrafting in general. That's the number one thing I hear from people. Oh, why would you ever sleep on the ground? It's so cold. Well, it doesn't have to be. You know what I mean? Get a good sleeping bag. Other than that, that's basically all I have to say. It's literally, if you want one tangible piece, it's a sleeping bag. If you want my actual advice, it's find a buddy that's going to give you a little bit more of an experience to make it enjoyable. I know yourself, Ben. You said you learned from your grandfather. It was, for myself, I remember going out in the woods, and I had a more enjoyable time when I was learning from somebody. I got a lot more out of it. I had a lot more respect for the nature. I just enjoyed it more. Thoughts?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, my earliest memories are actually just my cousin, and my cousin and I were about 6 months apart. I was 6 months older than him, and both of us, like we shared a grandfather, but he had his other grandfather was also right into the woods, and he would go with his other grandfather. And when we started hunting and fishing, most of the time it was just the two of us. And I mean, today I don't even think kids would ever get away with it, but we would take bicycles and go 2-3 kilometers away from town, and we'd walk from one end of a river to the next, all by ourselves, with a sandwich in a bag and a fishing rod over our shoulders, and it was awesome. But we learned so much just like that through trial and error. And you getting out there, you're going to do it. Having someone there to support you and to think things through is vital. If the person has more experience, that's awesome. If not, do some research and make sure that your trips are reasonable. You have a backup. Always have a way out. And if you're not comfortable, don't go 20 miles in the woods for your first trip. Go one or do it in your backyard. You would be shocked how many times I've set a hammock or a tent or a tarp up in my backyard just to see, does this work? Will I freeze it? Will I get soaked? Will it just blow over if a wind comes? Will it support itself? Like these. Yeah,
I'm not laughing at that. I'm
no.
laughing at it. I've actually done that. Set something in the back, and I had people over. It's like, yeah, this is a shelter design that I worked on, and this thing's gonna be bulletproof. And as I was bragging this thing up, gust of wind just blew it away. So I mean, that's just one of my little experiences when I was starting out. I was like, this is gonna be so great, and off it went into the blue yonder. That was it.
And it happens to the absolute best of us. There's nobody that's perfect. When you go out, there are things you're gonna try that you think, oh, this would be great, and sometimes I see Adrian asked another question. This kind of leads into it. He asked, like, do you use things for uses that's different than their original intent? And that is almost how I live my life. I mean, I go through a grocery store or a hardware store and I'm looking at items and I'm always thinking, what could I use this for? Could I change this? And I get real excited when I see this happen. And I've seen it happen the other day on YouTube. Mark Young did a demonstration with the vegetable steamers, the ones that fold open. I'm sure you can all.
I've seen that one, yeah.
And I've often thought that would be an awesome fire shield. They fold down to next to nothing. You can open them up. You can put a pot inside. And he went and did it. Like he beat me to it. I thought about it for years, never tried it. But I think that anyone who spends a lot of time in the woods knows that the perfect gear isn't really able to be purchased with that intent, but find something that does work and improve it. It's part of the fun, definitely part of the adventure.
Oh, for sure. Some of the best equipment I have, well, most of the best equipment I have, best quote unquote, this is opinionative, is stuff that I've either repurposed or I say designed myself loosely, but I've made work for what I wanted to do myself. For instance, perfect one that Adrian was talking about there, metal containers that holds kitchen utensils, converted into a hobo stove. Mark did a great video on that as well. Yeah, exactly. You have one in the video there for those that aren't able to watch, they're listening. Ben just had a metal container there that we were talking about. But yeah, finding additional purposes for something or reinvented purposes for something is a major part of bushcraft in my idea. If I can have one item that does 5 things instead of carrying 5 things, saves weight. I don't mind putting in a little extra effort to make something do multiple things if it's going to save me weight and time in the long run. It might be annoying, but annoying is better than carrying an extra 2 pounds, for instance. You know what I mean? Especially if you're trekking 15, 20 kilometers. Yeah, I'm not going to ramble on too much about that. Could go all day on that. I guess that's kind of the point. Jumping kind of back into our script here. How long have you been into bushcrafting and what enticed you to get into it, Ben?
Well, we did a touch a bit of that, not intentionally, but I don't remember not being in the woods. It's always been there. Like I said, I grew up in a small town in the middle of Newfoundland. It's so small, we actually had a pet caribou for a while as a town. So I've always been in the woods and always enjoyed it. It's just the way I grew up. I don't know that I can. I definitely can't remember not being in camping or hunting or fishing or hiking or doing something, building cabins, camps. As kids, we'd go in and make those little shelters, like out of whatever we could find, whether it be natural materials or discarded materials. I've touched on it all my life, and I'm still to this day, every day, learning something new. And yourself, Robert, like.
So for me, much like you, I grew up in the woods. I grew up in Barney's River. If anybody that's here in Nova Scotia knows where that at, it's about halfway between New Glasgow and Antigonish. Actually, I think it's almost dead center in between the two. But anyway, I grew up in Barney's River. Um, it's it's kind of an out there spot, not an out there spot. But anyway, where I was, it's kind of an out there spot. It's got a lot of woods around me, and literally just up the road from where we lived, maybe a kilometer, my dad used to work on a hill. I can't remember who owned it now, but anyway, he used to log up in there. And as I said before, my grandfather and grandmother were into picking brush. For anybody that remembers that old term, you used to pick balsam fir, and you'd sell it during Christmas. You could either bale it or put it on a stick, class one, class two. Yeah, my age might be showing now, but anyway, it was always kind of a way of a life during that stuff. Instead of eating a cold lunch, you just made a fire in the woods and you had a bite to eat, cook something up. Instead of sitting in the snow, you made a camp chair. Gets you out of the snow, you're a little bit more comfortable. And that's, I mentioned it earlier. It's not, to me, bushcraft isn't surviving. It's being at home in the woods. It's making you more comfortable and happier where you're at, right? So, and for as long as I can remember, I've been running around in the woods, literally, same as you. Just, I'm trying to think of a time when I wasn't, and I was born in Barney's River, and I didn't leave Barney's River until I was 13, and then I only went a little bit up the road to Miragamish, and I got in with the Shore Road boys there, and we were always in the woods doing something we probably shouldn't have been. Whole other story, but yeah, it's always been a going thing. And for me, it wasn't getting into bushcraft. It was always just a way of life. I didn't even know it was a thing, honestly, until I got older. To me, it was just, oh, people don't know these skills. That's kind of weird. Like, everybody knows these. You grew up in a logging camp. Everybody just kind of did these kind of things. Maybe not as much as like a bow drill fire, but definitely making a fire in the woods, or a birch bark cup, a seat. Basic things which a lot of people enjoy about bushcrafting were just everyday items to me.
Yeah.
I just want to make a mention of Adrian said another good line here when we were talking about multi-purposing things. It's literally in the name, bush crafting. You are crafting something, so making something out of something else. Very good point, Adrian. I always appreciate the input. Yeah, Ben. So anyway, we were already discussing it, I guess. But what does bushcrafting mean to you? What does it really mean to you when you get down to it?
To me, it's anything that gets you into the woods, gets you enjoying the woods, gets you closer to the woods or the bush. So it's the beauty of it. It's the broad subject of the matter. It's not just camping. It's not just hiking or fishing or hunting or any of these things. It's all these things combined and even more. It encompasses aspects of survival, aspects of prepping for things, not so much the new term for prepping, but just getting ready to go. Half the trip for me is just getting ready for it, planning the trip, figuring out where we're going to go, what am I going to take for food, what am I going to take for supplies and equipment, and do I need equipment? Can I do without it? Do I want to go bigger? Do I want to go smaller? Can I get my pack weight lighter? It's the whole experience and everything I can learn there from it. And now, in the last few years, it's sort of the people that I can meet because of it. Because up until the bushcraft gathering, it was something I did more solitary, except for my family. I mean, me and my wife, since we met, one of the first things we did was take a camping trip, and we hadn't spent a year together, and we did the Liberty Lake Loop Trail in Keju. Mm-hmm. We may have gotten rescued from that, but that's a different story.
Stories for a later time.
Yeah, stories for a later time. But it's something that I've been fortunate to enjoy with my wife and my 3 kids. I got 3 daughters, and they're all into it. Down to a 3-year-old, and she already has her own hammock, and she knows that she can sleep in it all night. She was sleeping in it from age 2, maybe less. And my older girls are 7 and 9. They've both owned knives since about 5 and been carving things and playing and making fires and stuff. And that's kind of the life I've tried to give them. We're fortunate to have a cabin on the South Shore where we spend a ton of time and camp. Anytime we're not there, we're generally camping or hiking or doing something that we can. and we're always looking for new things to do. So yeah, bushcrafting is anything that gets me out and enjoying the outside. And I know you and your wife and kid spend time out and do stuff, because I seen you at the first bushcraft gathering, and I know, like, you know, we both had infants at the same time. Like I think it was a challenge to see who had the smallest kid, and it was me or you.
Yeah, it was. I'm trying to remember. Willie was born in December, and I think the first one was in August. So yeah, we were splitting hairs there. It was pretty nip tuck.
Yeah, because
So
Kenzie was born in February, so
so you technically had the younger kid. We can put it to rest by
I
2 months.
yeah. But
Uh,
we were quite excited to see another couple there with a young child, because you kind of a little self-conscious about it sometimes. Like, will people judge us for taking such a little kid out camping?
and funny enough, we had the same worry. Melissa and I actually had that conversation where, like, well, should we try and find a babysitter or should we take her? Like, what are people going to think? And it ultimately came down to, like, we wanted to to experience this at a young age. This is what we do. This is what we kind of at least want her to experience. As she gets older, she can make her own choice if she wants to partake in it or not, but we don't want to shelter her from it either.
Yeah, I just took a quick glance down at the questions.
Yeah, that's what I was doing at the same time.
Adrian asked the question, what do you do in the off season to keep the gear in shape? And I'd love to say there is no off season, and in a lot of ways there isn't. Like, this year I took my oldest daughter camping just about a month ago. I went down with Andrew DeAdder of the Bushcrafting group.
Yep.
And we spent an overnight. I think it was minus 18 degrees. Well, I guess a month and a half ago now. It was in January. And we enjoyed ourselves. We had a great time. Both me and my daughter slept in our own hammocks. And I definitely over-insulated. Like, we had 4 sleeping bags on us because I was terrified she'd be cold and not enjoy herself.
Actually, I can hear the little one there, I think, now.
Yeah, I got a visitor. Hey, gorgeous. Did you coming up to say goodnight to me?
No.
No, you're coming down
No.
to bug.
Hey, darling, you having a good time with Dad?
You're on the internet. Everyone can see you.
So I guess for me, Adrian, what I do in the off season to keep I don't really maintain my gear because, as Ben said, there really is no off season. I always keep a bag in the truck which has my basic needs, which even in the winter, if I had to go off into the woods for a night or two, if something happened, knock on wood, hopefully it never does, but if I did, everything's there and I'm ready to go. But my wife, who's actually on the chat there, she can attest to, she may walk into the office or into the mudroom and I might be practicing a hand drill, or I might be fine-tuning a socket for my bow drill set, or I might be sharpening a knife. Like, I never really drop the skills. It does slow down in the winter just because of the family life and my work, but it never really goes away. There's always something on the go. It's always somewhere in my mind. Lily was 8 months and yours was only about 6 months. She worked out the math. But yeah, so I guess in the off season, if you have an off season, if you are in the city or something like that, you find it hard to get out, literally just you can mock through some of your skills. You don't have to start an ember with a bow drill, but maybe take the bow if you still have a bow. Like, funny enough, I still have the bow that I made for the original Nova Scotia Bushcraft gathering when I did the small demo there after Sam, when a couple people were asking me questions. I still carry that bow. It's always been a part of me, so I like it now. But yeah, you could always take your bow out. You may want to check the strings on it. Take your knife out, run it over a strop. Just keep your gear maintained, if nothing else. Just handling it, be familiar with it. It'll help you when you get out into the woods. If you're, I don't want to say skittish, but if you're not familiar with your equipment at your fingertips, it can lead to your problems later on. Would you tend to agree with that, Ben?
Oh yeah. I mean, well, you see me sitting here. This is a workbench I have in the basement, and it's dedicated to bushcraft and bushcraft related items. And I've got like all my knives, my first aid kits. I got odds and ends I work with. I got knives I've made, and I'm down here fairly regularly, like tinkering with it and playing with it and trying to decide which piece of gear I want to to pack away. I have 2 bags packed generally with similar type gear, but just different loadouts for slightly different situations. And I'm constantly just rejigging it and thinking, if I want to do this, what kind of gear would I take? Would I rather take an axe or the saw, or do I need either? And that can take, time, but it also gets you really thinking. So when you come to the on season, when you're ready to go, you have sort of a lot of this stuff thought through. And while you're at it, then you're like, if you're looking to repurpose gear and find better gear, when you're out and you know what you got and you've processed that so many times, when you see something at the dollar store or the Sobeys or Superstore or Walmart or Mech, you can decide, like, is this an improvement, or is this something that might serve more purposes? And that gets you, because I think your gear is always changing. Nobody keeps the same gear every trip. I truly believe that. You change.
And that's kind of what I mentioned before, like not knowing where. You need to know where you're going, what you intend to do while you're there, and how long you're going to basically pick your gear, right? So as you said, the gear is ever changing, for me anyway, based on those 3 conditions.
Yeah.
And a few other ones, but I mean, those are the 3 big ones, of course.
Who's going with you changes your gear.
Exactly. That's another important one. Are you going by yourself or you have a buddy? Because if you have a buddy, maybe you can share equipment.
Yeah.
No sense you're both carrying the same piece of equipment.
No need to take 2 axes. There's no need to take 2 saws for most trips. So if I'm going with a buddy and he wants to take an axe, I might take a saw. And then we have 2 functioning pieces of gear that do similar jobs but differently, and each have their advantage.
Exactly.
Stove. I wouldn't take 2 stoves. It seems to be a bit of a waste. You can split your fuel if you have to take a fueled stove, or maybe you take a twig stove, in which case you don't need to worry about that. These are all things to think about. And the weather. If you're expecting wet weather, you take a different stove than if you're expecting nice dry weather.
No, I completely agree with you, honestly, Ben.
Yeah.
So, as I mentioned way back at the start of this, for those that just came in, Ben and I have very similar upbringings when it came to bushcraft. So, as you can see, that's starting to relate into the way we think as well. We both have very similar thought processes, and I think anybody that's new to bushcraft would, as they build experience and skill sets, will start getting their own opinions on a lot of these topics. But I think, and feel free to chime in here, Ben, but I think most bushcrafters tend to have that very similar mindset once they get a few outings under their belt.
Oh, for sure. The big differences seem to be the eventual preference to certain gear. Like, maybe you like the big knives. Maybe some other guys like tiny little knives, like the Eldridge, I think is the more, is it Eldridge? That little tiny.
Yeah, I can't help you on the knives thing, and this is a topic for another one. But the age-old question, what's the best knife, right? I hate that question because there is no best knife, in my opinion. There's the knife that works for you and the task at hand.
there's the old one, too. The best knife is the one you have.
Exactly.
Right? And it goes right with what you're saying. I have expensive knives, cheap knives, and a ton of knives that I would love to own.
Actually, just while you're on that thought, you keep talking. I want to grab something really quick.
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, yeah, like, I think we both do hammocks, but I'm sure we have different version of hammocks. And I've done tent camping, and I really kind of want to do tarp camping, but the big problem I have with tarp camping is I love comfort, and I hate that you'd always end up with a stick in your back or a rock.
Dang, I went looking for a knife. I was going to prove a point here. I have a nice, it's a Les Stroud knife, and I have an $8 Olympia knife that a couple of friends of mine got me for one of my birthdays. And I'll tell you right now, I use that $8 Olympia way more than that Les Stroud knife.
Yeah.
I guess all my stuff, I actually cleaned my office up, and my overflow gear went to the garage.
I can get a selection of knives in a second here. So, like, you got your standard Mora style knives.
Wife uses one of them, loves it.
Yeah, like generally about $10, $20, depending on where you find them.
Yeah, I think we hit 15 when that store in Halifax was closing.
If you go to the Bushcraft one, I think it's close to $100, and Yeah, I don't know. Like you could tape a flint or a ferro rod to that, and you pretty well have a similar knife, honestly. And I picked up this like little Winchester thing at Walmart. It was
One of
like
my
a nice.
favorite knives is one of the Winchester ones. Anybody, not to cut you off there, Ben, but I'm just plugging Sam for a sec. Anybody that wants to see some really interesting videos, I can't pronounce his last name, so I'm not even going to bother, but I'll include it in whatever video description where this goes up. Sam from Sam's Trail Adventures there, he does a nice couple reviews on a few pieces of equipment, and he does a Winchester knife, and it has when I bought the four wheeler, this knife came in the trunk. Believe it or not, the old owner forgot it there. When I got it home, I was like, "Oh heck, a knife!" I called him up. He's like, "Just keep it." It was like a $20 knife or something. Don't worry about it. It's become a great knife. It's in my bag in the truck right now. So that's just proving the point that don't stress so much on gear. Just you will acquire it over time, and you will find things that you like that other people will look at you like you got three heads, and you'll just be like, "No, man, this is mine. It's the best thing ever. It works for me."
Here's one. Graham might recognize the design a little bit, but I stole some of the idea. But or Randall. But it's an old file I had somebody had worked. They threw it out, and I worked it down. I annealed it. I filed it to a different shape. I rehardened it. I cut myself a little handle, and that's great. I mean, I tried making a few spoons with it. It works great, and if I had a decent sheath, it would probably come in the woods with me more. But it's one of the things I'm going to work on, trying to make leather sheaths and stuff. I tried the knockoff Kydex with is it ABS plastic?
Oh yeah, with the heat gun and you try to squish it together. I've
Yeah,
had some luck with that, not great luck.
vacuum tube from Home Depot is what I was using. It worked decent. I had an axe cover.
And that's what I ended up with, a machete cover and an axe cover. That's about all that actually worked out for me.
Yeah,
But
it's that's you don't
oops.
have as much time as you'd like working with it. I find like
And
you
that's
heat
just it.
it starts to cool down pretty quick. I had a little press done up with just a couple of pieces of plywood and those cheap floor mats and a couple of four clamps around the corners.
I used a cement floor, a 2x4 in my knees.
Yeah, yeah,
Dirt cheap on a budget, right? I'm always about on a budget. I don't believe in spending big money for things, with few exceptions. That's another show. But I
yeah.
try to do everything on a budget realistically because I believe everybody should popular good sorry just jump into a comment Jamie said there that caught my eye. Pretty easy to fall into the popular gear trap. Very true. The latest and greatest doesn't mean that it's the greatest for you. It just means it's all the hype right now.
Yeah, one of the popular ones, and I actually really like it. The Agua Cannon. I got it for I think Christmas. My wife bought it for me or my birthday. I'm not sure which, but it's awesome little tool. It's a popular tool, but
It's
it's
a
not my.
handsaw, is it not? Like a fold down buck saw?
Yeah,
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 perfect. So just the people that can't see, I was trying. I thought that's what it was, but I didn't want to put my feet in my mouth. I do that
yeah.
enough already.
But
Yeah,
it's
so
like
great little saw.
right. And I had a Trailblazer before, and I had that as a young teenager. And honestly, other than the fact that I lost uh, one of the caps and the blade got dull and it's hard to find replacements. And if anyone knew out in Berwick, I think it's Bargain store out there, Bargain Harleys. They used to have a bunch, but I missed it. Showed up 2 days too late or something. But, so I've had those, but a lot of my gear is exactly what you described, like more budget stuff.
I'm a huge believer in budget. Don't spend big money for things that you can. Sorry, let me back up. I'm very budget oriented and hands on oriented. I don't believe in paying big money for something that you will get a great deal of experience and good times from trying to craft yourself. I guess it's the most politically correct way to say I'm cheap.
Yeah. Well, and I have the. It was one of the challenges when you're on the bushcrafting is to make your own buck saw. So go out, and I went into my backyard, and there was a down tree. I cut a couple of branches off of it, did the slits and all that, and made the bushcraft buck saw. And honestly, it would work just as well as this other one. It doesn't pack quite as nice.
No. But at a
Well,
certain point, you start trading being able to build something in the woods. There's a difference between having those skills and doing it in the woods when you need to, and the convenience of throwing something like that in your pack for the sake of what would it be, less than a pound?
Well, yeah, I could weigh it. I'm not going to right here on right now, but yeah, it's very light. I doubt it's much more than a pound, and it packs fairly well. I'm gonna make a sheath with it. I bought a decent sewing machine so I could make more of my gear, and I haven't really perfected that art. It's one of the many hobbies I've started and haven't perfected. So
My wife calls me the seamstress of the house. I did the same thing. I bought a sewing machine more to sew some of my pants, but the kickback on that was I could start making my own catch bags and stuff like that for out in the
yeah,
woods. So that's all I did. I literally found one on Kijiji for like $50. It was a good solid machine, and I have put it through the paces, and it keeps on ticking.
I might
Um,
get you down and show me how to use mine properly.
the hardest thing's getting them threaded. But we're just crossed our 30-minute mark there, Ben. So why don't we try and wrap this up a little bit? And the last thing we wanted to cover is, where do you hope this podcast goes? Where do you see this going? What do you want to get out of this podcast?
Uh, I want discussion, and I want to learn. So by getting people to talk to us, to relay their questions and stuff, I've always found that when you try to teach someone something or discuss something, you always take home more yourself than you really do give. And it's not that you're trying to, it's just that you do, and you try to help someone. You learn so much. And this is an opportunity for me to learn and then share what I do know, and that we can discover things together. I mean, me and you, and in our audience, and I'm hoping we'll learn a lot from them. I'm hoping that the feedback from it will either teach us stuff or point us in a direction of somewhere we should be learning stuff.
No, and were you finished there, Ben? Before I cut you off?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
I guess for me, it's much the same. I want to get bushcraft out there because I mean, it's a skill I think everybody should at least be aware of and have some sort of footing in, whether they decide to never do it again or that they really want to get into it. They should have some sort of avenue where they can at least experience it without just running off into the woods by themselves all willy-nilly. You know what I mean? Which is one of the things I said back at the start. Running off into the woods with zero woods experience, it may work out great for you, but there's huge potentials there for things to go bad. You said yourself with search and rescue that I imagine you guys have run into some of those instances where people have gone off thinking that their skill set is yay high, and unfortunately it may be yay low, and people have gotten themselves into a little bit of trouble.
yeah. I'm sure that happens more often than you'd think. Really, fortunately, and I do say fortunately, the last few years, search and rescue has been relatively slow, and I don't blame it. I think a lot of that has to do with the technology that we all carry on our hands. Like, everyone has a phone with a GPS. We can contact help right away. But every now and then, there is the guy that just went out for an afternoon ride. And there is a case that happened here in Halifax a couple of years ago. I think his name was Robert Legier. You can look him up. He went in the woods on a mountain bike. We never did find him or his bike. And we don't know what happened. We don't know why this guy went, where he went, what happened. And it's the kind of a question. The more you learn, the more you prepare. You let people know where you're going, what you're doing. I've posted things on the bushcrafting site before where, if you're going to go off the trail, mark your trail, take a tag, put your name on it occasionally, put a date, time, mark your way in. When you're coming out, take it out.
Actually, that sounds like a great topic for another video. I'm not trying to cut you off at all, Ben, but it's just rolling in my head. That actually might be a great topic for a future video. What can you do when you're new to the woods? What are things that are going to make it more enjoyable and safer for you? You'd be an expert on that with your work with the search and rescue, right? Because they tell you what people should be doing, so you can look to see if potentially they did that and hopefully educate people down the road on what they should be doing.
Yeah, and I can throw a quick plug out here. I think Search and Rescue recently released a app for Android and OS. It's called Adventure Smart, and you can download it on your phone. It's free. I did it a few days ago. I haven't really played with it. I can't tell you a ton about it, but it is designed for that very thing, is to give you some ideas of what to do and who to tell. And I think it's got some some functionality in it to help you with your trip. And there's another whole episode on just technology, apps and programs we can use. But we're not running out of ideas. I think we could do this for probably a year or two and still not come close to the edges of what we can do.
And that's the other thing, I guess, getting back into this, what I hope out of this was one of the big questions I had from other people was, well, once you cover the topics, what do you do then? I believe as time goes on and technology changes, I don't think the topics are going to run out. As you said, we may even be able to revisit topics that we have talked about in the past, and we'll be able to recover them with new ideas, new innovations, new technologies, right?
Yeah,
So.
or just corrections, things that we thought we had that as we go on, just learned that maybe we weren't as right as we thought.
And that's for sure.
I'm not infallible, and I don't know everything, and I'm sure just in the short time we've really known each other. Like I said, we met 3 years ago, but we haven't really spoke much in the meantime. But I don't think you feel you are either. We're both learning here, and we both.
The day I stop learning is probably the day they bury me, in all honesty. If you go into the woods thinking you know it all, you are a very dangerous person in the woods. My 2 cents. That's not an official quote or any of that stuff. That's my own personal opinion. Somebody that goes into the woods thinking they know everything, like they have nothing to learn,
may end up having to meet me.
I was about to say, that's the person you're going to find 3 days later, search and rescue, going, what were you thinking? Like, why? And yeah, as for correcting ourselves, I am going to openly say it right now. One of my favorite things to say, and my wife can vouch for this, is open mouth, insert feet, jump up and down to ensure fit. Because I do stick my feet in my mouth sometimes. I'll be very animate about something and passionate, and then have to come right back and be like, well, I guess I was wrong. And I will get there. I am not scared to say that I was wrong and change my opinions on things. But hopefully that comes out and it makes for some enjoyable entertainment down the road.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ben.
I was going to say, I'm pleasantly surprised. We've easily covered 45 minutes, and this has gone pretty smoothly. I really look forward to continuing this, and hopefully the next time it'll go so smooth. This has been great.
Yeah, for sure. And for anybody wondering what Ben and I were looking to do with this, and I think this is still the plan, is we're going to try and put one out on a weekly basis, starting off.
Wow.
Oh, anyway, yeah, so I think Ben and I are going to try and put one out on a weekly basis starting off until we get rolling and get the feel for this. We are learning, ladies and gentlemen. This is a learning experience for both of us, just another step in the bushcrafting rung, if you will, on the technology side. So hopefully this smooths out a little bit over time. Things will get a little nicer. We'll have some niceties up on the screens. Hopefully get a little bit more interactive. We'll find our permanent footing somewhere. We're just kind of running off my budget bushcraft channel right now, which I'm hopefully going to X-nay for the next one. Now that we have a working title, we can hopefully set up our own Facebook page, maybe a YouTube channel, have a little better outlet. Eventually, we are going to try and get these onto iTunes so people can download them later. I am looking at setting up a website in the next few days where we can upload the audio-only version of these. That's why I try to go out of my way to explain what we have on screen or anything like that if people can't see it. And there comes my own little one in to give me a smirk. You want to come up and say hi? Hey, baby. Hey, baby. So yeah, that's for people wondering what we're doing. That's where we're hoping to go out of the whole project in general. As Ben said, I'm looking to get a lot of interaction. That's one of the big things I like. That's why as the questions come up on the side, we just jump right to them. It makes things definitely smooth. You're going to put your feet on my keyboard, aren't you? But is there anything else you want to add, Ben, before we wrap this up? Because as you mentioned, we are crossing that 45-minute mark.
No, that's perfect.
There you go.
It's been enjoyable.
Sorry, go ahead.
I said, no, it's perfect. It's been really enjoyable. If you see me just sort of glitch out there for a second, apparently I accidentally set off the alarm on my car, and my wife came and yelled at me.
Uh-oh. Just stay there, baby. So next episode, Ben, it's going to be, are we going to try for Wednesdays at 8:30 every week? Starting off at least?
We'll try that, yeah. If we need a delay, we can announce that, but or push it off. Yeah.
So hopefully I will keep everybody informed as much as I can between the two channels where we advertised these shows at. Hopefully our audience grows eventually. once again, really encouraging the interaction there, guys. We love your questions. It gives us something to talk about. Hopefully, at some point, we have some conflicting opinions. Not that I want to hook a fight with Ben in any way, shape, or form, but that makes for interesting conversation. You guys, for all intents and purposes, you guys can have an opinion on here and come in too. Later on, Ben and I have talked that we're going to try and get some other guests on the show. I do have the ability to, if you have Skype and you would like to come on the show and you have a specific skill set you think would be interesting to talk about, I hope she doesn't shut this down, but if I do, guys, sorry. If you have an interesting skill set, get a hold of one of us. We'll definitely try and work you in. This is for everybody. It's not just Ben and I own the world. This is Ben and I hopefully introduce everybody else to everybody else. So I know I myself went to talk to some of our local crafters and stuff like that, like Jamie Harris, who's joining us here now. He does really great work with metal and leather. There's a couple other people in there. Randall Graham, he makes custom knives. You were talking about one of his hook knives there. He does great spoon carvings. Mark, we could get Mark on here. Maybe have a few. Yeah. Is that the
Jamie
first
Harris?
annual? Yeah, Jamie Harris did that work. Perfect.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where I want to go. I want interaction. I want, for lack of a better word, conflict. Not bad conflict where we're yelling at each other, but a difference of opinion makes things interesting. You know what I mean? It adds flavor. Thank you. But yeah, so closing statements. Thanks for coming, guys. Really enjoyed it. Hopefully next time I will ramble less. But what about you, Ben? Is there anything you'd like to say for our final comments? You want to come up?
No, that's good. Like, I look forward to the next one. We'll definitely have lots of conversations. And, I'm sure, because I'm generally argumentative, and we'll find something to disagree on. Don't worry, it'll come.
It's definitely going to come. There's going to be some topic, but anyway, yeah, that's all good for me. Just gotta get rid of the daughter here for 1 second. Here, Mama. There we go. The way I make sure I don't crash everything in the mix here. But yeah, once again, thanks for coming, everyone. Hopefully we see you next week, which is going to be, do we get a date on that, Ben? The 13th?
This is the 6th.
Yep, so 13th at 8:30. Topic to be announced. We have some ideas there. Maybe if we can work it in, maybe we'll try and get a guest on or something like that. If not, we'll be back talking about something, that's for sure. I'm hoping we're going to do a half dozen episodes at least before we make any opinion to pull the plug or change formats or something like that, right?
Yeah, sounds perfect.
All right, thanks, guys. You guys have a good time. Hopefully we'll see you next week.
Bye.